Discover over 100 episodes of Bartholomewtown on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
Well, I think a lot of the work that's been done, by the governor and the Commerce Department of bringing businesses in has been extremely positive. I think what we've also done in infrastructure is we're well positioned and we continue to get a lot of finance. It is really about quality of life investments that do address both economic development, jobs, recreation, a number of things that go on in the state, clean water, obviously.
Welcome in to another edition of the Bartholomewtown Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, I sit down with the Executive Director and CEO of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, Jeff Diehl. And as always, great to spend some time together here on the pod. Yes, autumn has officially arrived here in southern New England. Well, I guess it's arrived everywhere in the northern hemisphere. But it's like 80 degrees out, a beautiful Rhode Island afternoon as I speak to you from the Bartholomewtown Podcast studios in Providence. And an interesting conversation on tap for today. Jeff Diehl, who is the CEO and Executive Director of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. And if you're like me and most Rhode Islanders, you're probably not even sure what the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is. So that is laid out in detail here in this episode. We also preview the upcoming Rhode Island Infrastructure Summit. Now, that's coming up on September 26th. It's open to the public. And look, when we talk about Rhode Island's present, the future, all these conversations that we've been having together over the last year or so. No doubt about it, infrastructure, it's a core component. It's a frequent complaint in terms of legacy issues here in the Ocean State. And look, as Rhode Islanders, I think we have a right to know, is the state preparing for the infrastructure that we'll need down the line, maybe even sooner down the line than we anticipate when it comes to new technologies? Look, automated vehicles, runways, who knows what, but certainly just on the baseline level in terms of bridges and the facilities that we use on a day-to-day basis. So all of that discussed and more with Jeff Diehl. Stick around. All right, great news. Elmwood Songwriters Club, presented by Bartholomewtown, is back, held right here at the Loft in Providence, and the next edition is Friday, October 11th at 7:30 p.m. Now, this is a free event that features a variety of Rhode Island songwriters from different backgrounds, different genres, performing short, intimate sets, again, right here at the Loft. And the best part is I'm the host. Well, that's not the best part. The best part of that, the aspect of it that's great, is that I draw the order of performers at random. So you never know who's coming next. Everyone's on their toes, and there's always a lively discussion, refreshments, all sorts of entertainment for you right here at the Loft. And by the way, there's plenty of parking. We have a gigantic lot here, no meters, none of that business. Right off the highway to Elmwood Avenue, to the Loft for Elmwood Songwriters Club. Again, the next edition, October 11th, 7:30 p.m. Now, the best way to keep up on the lineup and other details about Elmwood Songwriters Club, follow the pod on Instagram at Bartholomewtown Podcast. It's Elmwood Songwriters Club, presented by Bartholomewtown, October 11th. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Bill Bartholomew. Okay, let's get right to it. My conversation with Jeff Diehl.
Yeah, we're really excited about the summit. This is going to be our third year. We started it at our expense 3 years ago to really highlight infrastructure in the state. We bring a number of different public and private sector experts, both from within the state as well as outside, to come and address a variety of issues and think about solutions and innovations in driving infrastructure investment forward in the state of Rhode Island.
And that's not only, in terms of internal within Rhode Island, but also the idea that Rhode Island can serve as, I guess, a pipeline regionally, nationally, and globally with our ports and other aspects of our transportation infrastructure.
No, that's exactly right. And, I think a big challenge that many communities have, and Rhode Island in particular, is how do we bring businesses here to hire people? How do we get the infrastructure in place to make that economic development move forward? And certainly, as you said, the ports are an important part of that.
Right. Even thinking now, I just heard on last week's A Lively Experiment, of course, so 2 weeks ago, A Lively Experiment, Ted Nisi, they were discussing the airport, some of the airlines cutting back services. What are some of the other kind of core areas that the summit will address? Is it bridges and physical things you can put your hands on, basically?
It's a lot of different things. I mean, it is really about quality of life investments that do address both economic development, jobs, recreation, a number of things that go on in the state, clean water, obviously. We also try to make the panels relevant to what's happening today. So a lot of the panels are addressing opportunity zones, again, trying to bring investment into certain parts of the state, especially investment from outside of the state. That's really important. Resiliency and climate change, which of course is very important when we've got hurricanes. Fortunately, we got missed by this last one. Also school construction. That's a very important thing, both with regards to residents here as well as businesses coming in. And also clean energy, which continues to be a common theme, including the wind industry as an economic development driver here in the state.
Fascinating that wind is now right at the heart of this discussion. It seems like Rhode Island is kind of positioning itself to be a global leader in that area. Some would argue we already are because of the 5 that we have off of Block Island. How much of new technology, I guess, things that are, that maybe wouldn't have been talked about a year or two ago is kind of on the agenda for this year's summit?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very important part of it. As you said, when you're the first in the country to have something, you have a little bit of an advantage. Massachusetts obviously also is positioned themselves a number of years ago, and so there's a little bit of catch up that we have to do. But I think we've got a lot of focus, from the governor's office and a variety of other players in the state to drive that business forward and be a center of innovation here in the country.
Who are some of the panelists at this year's summit?
Well, we're really excited about the panels overall, but I think we've also got some great keynote speakers. So we've got President Paxton from Brown will be addressing as a keynote. We also have Henry Cisneros, who was formerly the mayor of San Antonio, did a lot of work there in infrastructure, was also the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and now is a private sector investment banker with Siebert, Cisneros, and Shank, women and minority-owned business, and they've developed a new infrastructure fund, so it'll be very good to hear from him. We also have the mayor of Annapolis coming to talk about climate resiliency as an economic development tool. And so we're really excited about having all of them participating. Commerce Secretary Pryor will also be speaking about economic development and how they're trying to drive infrastructure as well. So.
Sure, I can think of the new bridge, the new pedestrian bridge as an example of that, and the whole Wexford Opportunity Zone. Is that something that is going to kind of be put on a pedestal for the rest of the country to see that what we've done here in Providence and Rhode Island so far, and then also kind of where that plan is going with the 195 land downtown Providence?
Yeah, that'll be a number of things that we're talking about. We're also going to be talking about a lot of those infrastructure projects that people don't think about and look. And one of the more important things, I think, is also in the resiliency and climate change, severe weather, is how do we protect the infrastructure that we have? And that's going to be, I think, a very important topic. It's certainly a strategic focus for the infrastructure bank.
Is this open to the public, or is this ticketed, through a certain infrastructure, I guess?
It is open to anyone. You can register at our website, riib.org. We have over 275 people registered already. We had between 300 and 400 last year. So we've got pretty good interest from a variety of different people.
And the dates specifically?
September 26th. The registration opens at 8. The program starts at 9. It lasts till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Nice. So a nice compact day.
Yes.
Probably have a lunch in there somewhere.
Yes, we do.
Nice.
There are refreshments provided.
Awesome. Let's talk about the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. Process by which stuff happens. That's something that is lost on anyone who doesn't look too deeply at it. You can think about bonding and all this, that, and the other, and the direct earmarks for certain projects or whatever it may be. But how does the infrastructure bank work? What is the process? Do you basically have a pile of money that you make a decision how it's going to get dished out, or do you have to adhere to specific, whether it's legislative or voter referendum-oriented demanded protocols? How does that all work?
Well, we view ourselves as a central hub of local infrastructure investment, and we're focused on 4 different areas, and by extension, a fifth. The first is water. We've been doing it, we've been around for 30 years. It's our 30th anniversary, so the summit is also a celebration of that as well. So it's water, clean drinking water, what we call clean water, which is effectively wastewater. We've got municipal roads and bridges, clean energy, both in the municipal space as well as in the commercial space. And then we've got brownfields. And we've recently had our authorities expanded into broader resiliency. And so we're looking at how that will happen. Each of those different areas has separate sources of capital. We're not guaranteed by the state. We're not a line item budget. We operate independently. But we've got certain capital that runs those different spaces. And we've got projects that fit within those. We also have some other things where we lend money to homeowners to remediate cesspools, fix septic systems, or tie into a local sewer line. And we've also partnered with Providence Water to set up a lead pipe remediation program that's interest-free.
Right. I can think in North Kingstown, wasn't there a large-scale project to kind of convert in Wickford to a sewer away from cesspools? Is that's like you have your hands in something like that? Is basically...
Yeah, we funded that project,
okay.
And that is a lot of what we do. So that's, it's not only an environmental project of looking to clean up that space and make it much more efficient to keep the bay clean, but it's also an economic driver. If you've got sewers, you can do different things. Restaurants can grill steaks and grill fish easier than not being on a septic system. So trying to drive more white tablecloth restaurants can also drive more foot traffic to the stores and therefore create greater economic benefit.
Absolutely. No question about that. The more people that are out spending money on something they're enjoying, the better off the economy is going to be. I mean, it's as basic as it gets, but it seems like in Rhode Island sometimes we lose that. There's now initiatives to try to expand activity downtown in Providence after dark at nighttime.
Yes.
But it's very obvious that there's a missing ingredient of human activity. So your position is that beef up infrastructure, and that's going to at least do quite a bit to improve that.
No, that's exactly right. And that's a lot of what we're looking at. And in the summit, we'll talk a lot about that. You look at the opportunity zones that have been identified in Rhode Island of trying to bring investment in. Also, you need basic infrastructure there to help drive that investment. Whether it's also on Route 1 in North Kingstown of trying to bring that space back up. It suffered quite a bit when the Navy base shut down. But of course, now we've got 11,000 people working at Quonset that need housing and restaurants and stores. And how do we help develop that as a community and look to move forward on the economy?
Fascinating. Do you ever buy properties? Like there's a huge, on Route 1, there's some old restaurant for sale, large property that, it seems like it's about to become totally dilapidated. This is right where Routes 1 and 1A meet. Is that something you'd pick up and kind of convert or try to massage, or is it more throwing money behind existing good money?
Well, that's not really how we operate. So if somebody were to look at that building, what can we help them do? We can help close financing gaps, working with Commerce in terms of some of the programs they have. We've got what's called Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, which can help a building owner put in new heating and air conditioning and ventilation, new lighting, solar panels. If there's an issue from brownfields or asbestos in the building, we've got a brownfield fund that can help finance that removal or the fixing up of the property, and obviously also either driving sewer or drinking water to that building. We're also in the process of trying to develop a commercial septic system loan program that can bring the cost of that down to help commercial properties and nonprofits fix existing septic systems.
Broadly speaking, what's the biggest challenge that the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is looking at right now? From Westerly to Woonsocket, whether it's a specific project or if it's something just that's generally tough around here?
Well, a lot of what we're working on is, I think in terms of next generation is really looking at resiliency and protecting infrastructure from severe weather events. We've invested $20 million in the Warren wastewater treatment facility to harden that against rising sea level and storm events. We helped Warwick finance the berm around their wastewater treatment facility, which is a classic picture from 2010 flooding. And that was riverine flooding of that wastewater treatment facility being underwater. So that's a lot of what we're looking at. Of course, resiliency and protecting assets is a little more difficult from a funding point of view because it doesn't create revenue. It doesn't create fees like a sewer system does or a drinking water system. So how do you pay that? But of course, if you invest $1 in protection today, it saves you $6 down the road if there's an event that damages those facilities.
What about the landfill, the waste, what the heck's the Resource Recovery Center, not the formerly known as the Johnston landfill when I was in elementary school, I guess. That, and then also on Block Island, there's the infrastructure issue of trash that's kind of making its way through the side of the island in a way.
Well, there's landfills. We've been involved in capping a lot of landfills and also the stormwater runoff that results from that. We are financing the repair of that landfill on Block Island that was causing that problem, that was eroded from storms. And so they've been working on fixing that. We've been providing the finance for that.
So it's basically all the things that we need to get out of pre-Roman times as a society. The bank is making sure that that's funded. And also it's doing it in an organized way in terms of prioritizing projects. Is that fairly accurate?
One of the biggest things that we've done over the last 3.5 years is we've reorganized ourselves from being program-centric because we had really 3 programs. They're run independently. And as our mandate was expanded in late 2015, we realized that we had the same customers, predominantly municipalities. And we now have 4 or 6 programs that we can bring to municipalities. So we're out there engaging with cities and towns and other quasi-state agencies about what their needs are and how we can bring those programs together. One of our biggest drinking water customers didn't realize that we could finance dam repair through our clean water program. They're one of our biggest customers in drinking water. They weren't aware that we had financing available for dams, and they've got some dams they need to work on. So that's a good example of how we're trying to bring financial solutions rather than just independent programs to bear. And it is about engaging with communities to think about what's their medium or near-term, medium, long-term infrastructure needs and how we might be able to combine our programs into that.
Last question before I just want to kind of shift into your backstory and how you've arrived here. There's been a little bit of, I guess it's been pretty vocal now in terms of bike routes and the Department of Transportation's plans kind of now spreading out some of the bike route projects over a 10-year period. Is that a specific area that the infrastructure bank is funding in terms of converting existing roadways into bike lanes? And, what else in terms of alternative transportation and public transportation are you looking at?
The bike lane, this gets back to one of your questions before of what do we do and how do we do it? Our sources of capital and our programs have limitations. So we can't just go out and do whatever we want. Right. So we do have some parameters within which we have to operate. While we can do municipal roads, bike lanes are a bit outside of that. But again, that's part of what we're trying to do is figure out what are those needs that communities have and how should we be thinking about perhaps modifying our programs that we have to meet those needs rather than modifying the needs to meet our programs. So we're switching the way that we've been thinking and also switching the way that communities are thinking about, what are their needs and how can we use our programs to help them meet their needs on a low cost basis, because that's what we do. We deliver below market finance to these programs.
Fascinating stuff. How did you become involved? Is this an appointed position or is this something that you're kind of around for?
The infrastructure bank has a board of directors. The governor appoints 4 of those. The general treasurer is the 5th member. They were looking for an executive director 3.5 years ago, and I saw that advertisement and applied. I was a public sector banker for a long time on a global scale, worked at a large global financial institution, and was looking to make a move to the other side of the table to the public sector. We're quasi-public. And this seemed like a really good fit for my past skill and experience of working in the public sector and infrastructure. And it's been a great move for me, and I think for the bank as well. So
that's great. Do you see Rhode Island coming from a New York background? Do you see Rhode Island as an opportunity for development for improvement, or do you see it as a situation that needs a certain amount of rescuing before you can realistically say, let's take it to the next level?
Well, I think it's the size of Rhode Island is both a opportunity and a challenge.
Sure is.
It's an opportunity because we can do a lot very easily by bringing different things together. Obviously, it's a bit of a challenge, again, because of its size. But I think that, while the recession was tough on Rhode Island, I think we've made great strides since then. And it's really, I think, a very rosy future. And we're doing a lot of work, not just the Infrastructure Bank, but a lot of the other agencies out there. And we're trying to work more closely together to bring a lot of this. And, we've worked very closely with the Department of Transportation to help them manage stormwater, where we provide finance that puts projects together in a short term and helps them address their needs to manage that.
We always hear first in, last out of a recession when it comes to Rhode Island, and now there's concern. If you look at, I guess, the bond markets would be one indicator, or just really anecdotal worrying and perhaps hysteria. We may be heading towards another recession. Infrastructurally, is Rhode Island prepared for that? And if so, would that allow us as a state to climb out of the thick of the recession, the teeth of it, if you will, faster and more aggressively than in the previous run that we had?
Well, I think a lot of the work that's been done, by the governor and the Commerce Department of bringing businesses in has been extremely positive. And those are businesses that seem to be stronger through a recessionary period. I think what we've also done in infrastructure is we're well positioned, and we continue to get a lot of finance. Our water programs are getting more money from the federal government every year, which is a good thing. And so I think we're very set up to weather any storm that might come our way, perhaps better than we have in the past.
I think I was in New York during the last recession. I remember I was working at the time. I was in a band, so I was fully committed to that. And then to make money, that fun part of life as well, I was working as a temp at a hedge fund for a while, and then at a few different financial institutions, a temp executive assistant. And the recession hit, and that was the end of it. I never heard back on any of those jobs. Anyone I know who was working in those types of jobs, it was sort of like, now we'll use our iPhone now. That's how dramatic employment, I guess, changed, at least in that one sector from my perspective. Is that something that the Infrastructure Bank, whether it's recession related or in general, is that something that is on your mind? Employment of full-time employees, part-time, temporary, even seasonal, is that an element of the work you do?
Well, by definition, a lot of our work is seasonal because construction zone in New England,
right.
Construction time New England is not 12 months out of the year. Some of it is, but the Infrastructure Bank, its investments over the last 30 years have, created or supported over 57,000 jobs. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do, is continuing not only to stimulate good construction jobs and those jobs that come from supporting the construction projects, but those projects we're doing are also supporting businesses and even nonprofits that are hiring people that continue to make it less expensive for them to operate their businesses. And, we've saved just in the last few years, we've saved local communities hundreds of millions of dollars of interest expense and over $60 million in energy expenses. And that's money that can go back into funding other priorities, education, public safety, recreation, other things in the community. So that's real money in the bank. And so I think that's one of the important things that we're doing, is trying to bring that less expensive way of investing in infrastructure that's supporting a lot of other businesses and jobs.
I'll have interviews, photos, and videos for you from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Summit on Thursday up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for me or the pod, and I'll be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Until next time, I'm Bill Bartholomew. We'll talk soon.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.